Going to start off this last session with Dr. Les Bender. He's with Texas A&M in College Station. With the GERG is the Geophysical Environmental Research Group. They run the TABS buoy system. It's kind of counterpart as far as the GLO oil spill is for the TCUN system that we operate at Blucher Institute. And last is a physical oceanographer. He got his PhD from University of Delaware in 1992, and he's been at A&M in College Station since '95. Les?
Thank you. All right. Let's see whether I stay here and be heard or move around.
You can pick it up and carry it if you want to.
Probably try
this
that.
Is supposed to work. I don't know.
I'll find that out too. There we go. We're mobile. Thank you. I'm going to talk to you about what seems kind of how does this relate to what this conference is about on Sargassum, but about a tool that's out there, an observing tool, along with some other observing tools that you may find of use in trying to understand how Sargassum gets from the ocean onto the seashore. But the basis of this talk is the Texas Automated Buoy System, and what we have here is not a $900 million X-band radar. That's a TABS 1 buoy. If you see one, please don't run it over. They're very small and they're hard to see, but this is about a $40,000 to $50,000 worth of very advanced instrumentation to track currents near the surface. There's a current meter down below there that is measuring the speed of the water and the direction, and also temperature. There's some satellite antennas in the top end of it that send that information back to shore. And there's a bunch of people that are involved in running this system, including the director of our of GERG, which we affectionately call it, Norm Guanasso. Then there's our marine tech, John Walpert. I don't know, you may be pleased to know that the thing is not totally Aggie engineered. John's from Canada, and he's done most of the design work on these buoys to improve them over the last several years. And then we have some folks, Woody Lee works on the instrumentation. And of course I need to mention the program sponsor, Buzz Martin at the GLO, is the oil spill scientific coordination officer for the TABS buoy system. And why is, if you haven't heard of it, what's the usefulness of this? Why did it get started? This is a nighttime shot, not the best, of a super tanker called the Megaborg. She's afire. She was lightering in 1990, about June, about 60 miles south of Galveston, and with 40-some million barrels of Angolan crude. Had a fire in the engine room. 4 crewmen lost their lives. About 8 million barrels went over, I think, into the ocean. A good part of it burned, a good part of it evaporated, and they were able to trap a lot of it. Not much of it went ashore. So it didn't have a large environmental impact. It happened a year after the Valdez, this is June of '90. So it did wake up the Texas legislature to getting on board with the national stuff, movements that were going on ashore, I should say. And they set up, in 1995, the Texas Automated Buoy System was set up in order to track the oil spill movement, because a lot of the information they had at that time, in 1990, was basically climatology. What do we think the currents have done in the past? Let's go out there and place our resources in that position, and it didn't work. There was wind shifts and the currents went in different directions. It actually works. We operate 8 buoys along the Texas coast. I'll show you a map of where they are. 4 of them measure the winds. There's 2 buoys that are operated on either side of the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary. They also are measuring winds and surface currents. That's an MMS requirement to the lease operators in the area to monitor the currents in the event of an oil spill. There's other things that go on. We collect data, we run models, and we do real-time analysis of all of this information, which is available on the web and gives you an idea of what the circulation is. So, and I'll talk about that. If you go to find the web page, which if you all look down on the bottom there, is where it is, but if you can't remember that, and I never do, just Google tabs, T-A-B-S, and Texas, and you'll get into this, and this is part of how you get into the page and what you see the first time you get into it, if you haven't already seen it before. I'm looking for the button. Here we go. These are in the green are the buoys that we run. You saw one of the pictures of the smaller ones, which is probably the one up here off of Sabine. There's one off of Galveston. There's one a little bit farther offshore in about 50 meters of water. There's the W here. That's up here off Freeport Moore. Down here we have D, which is basically right off of Port A. H is a larger 3-meter discus buoy that was put out there to measure red tide. Didn't work so well, but the buoy's still there and the position is still we're using that to collect data. And then off of Brownsville are buoys that we call J and K. These letters designate the positions at which these buoys always stay. They don't move. The black arrows show you the direction of the currents at the time of this was taken and this web shot was pulled off. There's also run by the National Data Buoy Center. There's 3 buoys here that are offshore and 2 Seaman stations, one at Port A, one up here at Sabine. And then these are the 2 buoys I told you that were about either side of the flower gardens. These buoys are measuring the currents every half hour, and then every hour they send the information back to us. And then so this picture that you're looking at gets updated. D, B, and F have been in the water since about 1995. All the other buoys were added in about 2000. So there's a wealth of data out there to do climatology and to do modeling. This is a picture of what they look like up close. Like I said, they're really hard to see even on radar, which probably explains why one of our biggest losses is due to collision. This is TABS 1 buoy. This is a larger buoy. It has a MET station up on top. This was deployed as part of an oil spill. And this is what we call a 3-meter discus buoy. Rather than being a spar buoy base that these are, spars provide you better. They don't move up and down the water column as much, and you get better currents. But a discus buoy gives you a lot more real estate to work off of. You can put more power on them, and they also can measure waves. So what I'm interested in part of my reason of coming down here is, A, to tell you what's available, and then to see if there's interest in turning some of these products into a way to do trajectory forecast so that you can do resource allocation. Because that's the whole idea behind doing an oil spill analysis. Once the oil's in the water, you're using all of this information to run models to do trajectory analysis and to decide where the oil is going to go, so that when your teams are out there with the oil booms and trying to clean things up, you don't put them on the wrong side, and you put them where you can most wisely use them. I put something up there about biomass assessment, which directly ties to some of the satellite things that Dr. Ian McDonald showed us. Here we go. When I said there's climatological products, these are pictures of what the mean circulation field looks like that I've derived over the use of the data for the time since 1995. So this shows you kind of what it looks like in May. Now, I've had to fill in data because the buoys are pretty widely separated, and what you're seeing is little vectors here, little red arrows that show you where the mean current is for that month, what direction it's headed. You can see here along the shelf, it goes in what we call the down coast direction. It's just the convention that we use, that the currents are running down the coast toward Mexico, primarily in this time of the year. You can see where the average winds are from the NDBC buoys and the Seaman stations. It's coming out of the southeast. So this tends to drive a down coast current and an up coast current from Brownsville all the way up to a convergence area here, which just happens to be right off of where we are right now. To fill in, these arrows here are a model that's based on what we call surface drifters. A lot of drifters were put in the water. They track the motion of the water right near the surface, and I'm able to do with a lot of mathematics to try to figure out what the patterns look like, and I fit the patterns back to what I know the buoys are measuring. So it gives me an idea, which is fairly accurate most of the time. I'm trying to show you here how accurate I think it is. This picture is up in the climatology. It's also done every month. The idea is you can see kind of that during this time period, that the flow is coming up the shelf here, like I said, and down above that. In June, it's not a lot different. A little more confusing because as we get into the summer, the winds get lighter and they're coming more and more out of the south, and the current's going to come more and more out of the south along the coast, and it's going to become more and more coherent until we get into July, where everything is coming up the coast and being driven by this wind that's coming mostly out of the south. And then in June, rather in August, this all starts to transition because the primary time flow is always to the south, is down coast. These products, like I said, are available. Can be used to try to track where maybe the sargassum is going from. If you have pictures from, let's see if I got this right. No, well, we'll go back. This is kind of show you that, well, I've shown you statistical. This is taken from a few days ago from the website to show you what a one-day picture is. I use the one-day currents from the last 24 hours and try to show you what I think is going on so you can see just what's happening out there on a day-to-day basis. This is interesting. I borrowed the picture with, now I know who to give credit to. But what I want to point out is another tool to understand maybe where some of these weed lines are following. This here is taken from a satellite altimetry, which actually measures the height of the sea surface. Uses 3 different satellites with 3 different patterns of overpasses. So it's a product that's put together by University of Colorado, the Colorado Center for Astrodynamics Research. And they take that and then using some physical properties of what's called geostrophic currents, they're able to kind of map where they think the currents are going. Here is what I think we all should recognize as the loop current coming in through the Yucatan Channel, coming way high up and bending back around. And over here we see the remnants of older loop current eddies that have pinched off and moved. And once the eddies, they basically break off on anywhere from a 9 to 18 month cycle, and then they move to the west at about 1 to 4 kilometers per hour. But inside of those you can see 1 to 2 knot currents that move across. What I want you to, if you could see, you look down here on this picture, which is showing the weed lines all wrapping around. And while the scale here, you have to kind of interpolate based on what you see as some physical features here. You go down here, I would point out that these weed lines are following the currents in the eddies that are spinning out here. And June 2nd, 2005, when this picture was taken there. Here's another tool of trying to figure out, if you don't have this picture, perhaps the weed lines are following all of this, and they're going to bring them ashore at some point. The current picture, as of a few days ago, shows a rather strong loop current eddy here, circulating off of, a little south of Brownsville, which is going to be kind of interesting. You also see the continuing up-coast flow here. We saw that, 3 years ago in that other picture. And now you can see it bringing it up here. So that's all I really wanted to show you was just some of the products. You get into the website for tabs, and TGL, the tab site rather, and there's a lot more products there. So this is of any interest. Please talk to me, and I can work on different products. Ask questions about how this stuff gets ashore, and then you'd have some sort of a forecast tool. So. Yes.
Most of my life sitting out here, it seems like the current goes that way.
That way is to the north?
That way. Is that the current that you're talking about?
Yeah, I believe it is. But it's more offshore. Some of the stuff inshore can be driven by the waves, the way the waves are coming into the coast, and or the winds.
So that you're talking like in the deeper water, not
in the deeper water. Or
Okay.
probably 10 meters. Sorry, 30
I'm not
feet.
allowed out there.
Anybody else? I know in 2000 I sailed with two 18-year-old kids on a 26-foot Ranger sailboat from here, actually from Port Aransas to Veracruz, in 5.5 days. And I studied. Frank Kelly used to be a colleague with Les and Norm and the rest of them over there, came to work at the Blucher Institute, and I spent days going through these images here from UCAR and any others I could find, trying to plan the perfect route off the rum line. It was 187 degrees from here to Veracruz, and we did great until we came back, and a low pressure in the Bay of Campeche just absolutely 180'd those currents coming back up, and we got caught. We did. We got caught pretty good. But it's cool if you're offshore and fishing or sailing or just general love science and circulation. That's the way to go. Thank you, Les.